Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And we've got the old band back together. It's been a few weeks of travelling here, there, and everywhere, but we're here. Fletch, welcome back, old boy.
Yeah, thank you. I've not been away anywhere. I've just been, head in the sand, busy. Just to earn a crust, yeah.
And I thought, on family, I probably shouldn't say that.
It's nice to say that. It's nice to be here, I should say. Not nice to say that because, family show and all
that. Yeah. Burns, are you well?
Yeah, not bad. I've been on the park and ride bus in terms of my travellings. I've been to Prutz Manor as well. It's posh there, isn't it? Harrogate. I had a night in Harrogate. It's nice there.
What? Burnsy, where did you go? Let me guess. Was it purely for leisure or for work?
Leisure.
Did you go to the Blues Bar?
No, strangely enough, didn't. Ended up went to Betty's. How middle class am I?
God.
He went
the Harrogate cliche
with his retired ticket to Betty's.
My word.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, moving on.
The dulcet tones of
nice. It's got shops.
Yeah, got some shops. It's got lots of shops. Yeah, lots of vape shops as well, but make of that what you will.
And Prutz, that's not Germany.
No, it's not. It's my house, which I've come back to briefly via Hull on the ferry, and then back tomorrow to Hamburg for Portugal against France, or France-Portugal on Friday night, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to.
Oh, I'm sure we'll get to some Euros chat a little bit later. But Bernsey, there was a specific topic you wanted to talk about, and before we get to that, coming up on today's programme, we've got loads to talk about. Obviously, the players are back in pre-season training. They came back on yesterday morning. I've lost all track of time. There's obviously lots of transfer talk. Nothing in yet at Hull City, apart from Ryan Giles, but I'm sure we'll get to Ryan Giles because that's a bit of a curious one a bit later on. One or two other players have gone, but things are starting to pick up now. Players back in pre-season. Obviously, we've had the fixture list out. We know that City start at home to Bristol City. Ugh. No offence to Bristol City, but that's another dull home tie. But at least it's at home, I guess. And then there's a potentially mouth-watering, I nearly said Carling Cup then, Carabao Cup home tie against the old rivals, that team from the Steel City. So much to talk about. But Bernsey, there was a topic you wanted to kick us off with, wasn't there?
Because I think to some extent maybe the destiny of the season depends on who they get out and what they get for Philogene and Greaves, personally. And I'm just fascinated by Philogene to Barcelona. And when I first sort of saw it, I thought, this is bonkers. If I'm honest, I still think it's bonkers. But how much credibility do we give it? Where's it at? What do you fellas make of it?
Well, there's from what I gather, there's definite interest. I mean, like you, I was kind of like, a bit skeptical. But in this day and age of how things are being, certainly if you look in the Premier League about how PSR deals are being worked, I think that is a theme that's going to develop across Europe now, with clubs trying to be clever with each other here, there, and everywhere to try and get around PSR. And I'm not saying that's the case here, but when my first thought was when you see Barcelona coming in, there's definite interest. For me, I'm not sure. I've got to be honest. I don't see the merit of a loan deal unless Barcelona are paying an awful lot of money to get Jaden on loan with a big carrot at the end of it that they make him permanent. Then great, but Barcelona haven't got a pot to what in. So, and we know what their financial situation is, and it's bleak. So that deal, I've got an element of it, and I don't see if Barcelona or any other club were paying £30 million or 30 million euros to get Jaden Philogene now, and the deal was structured financially in such a way that Hull City get, finance up front that helps them now. I say, okay, I'm not overly impressed, but I'm okay. I say, okay, it's probably a good deal for a player they signed for £4 million or their best part of 12 months ago. But a loan deal, I just don't see how that benefits, because City don't get a huge amount of money now. There's no guarantee they're going to sell the player, and they also lose a match-winning player that they need. And when you look at their squad at the minute, it's threadbare. It's if the season started tomorrow, they're in the relegation battle for me. Such is the lack of depth and attacking quality. They can't afford to lose a player of Jaden Philogene's quality on loan. So I don't know. I think we need more meat on the bones. We need to find out. We need to hear a bit more about that from Tam, from Ajun, and find out a bit more about what exactly is going to happen with that.
What do you make of it?
I mean, if it's something that, from a playing point of view, it would be something that would be insanely attractive, of course. But that's going off what Baz has said. If it's a football club trying to exercise their ability to attract players without actually paying the premium for them, then I'd be very wary of that. I mean, it's just a tough thing if that lands, I don't know, on Jaden's desk and you suddenly and it's an opportunity. I mean, with the great respect to a city that I know and love, I mean, yeah, you'd crawl over broken glass to go play for Barcelona, wouldn't you? Let's be brutally honest. Yeah. But I'd like to think, from a monetary point of view and a finances point of view, that it'd have to be absolutely beneficial to City. Of course, I mean that's a very commonsensical, daft thing to say, but unless it's a significant amount of money landing pretty straight away in City's bank account, I can't see why the stat side of the club that runs the finances would entertain it, unless suddenly Jaden says that this is something that I would absolutely love to explore and go after.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Fletch? You know, as a player, and Prutz come in as well. You know, Barcelona, with respect to Hull City, Barcelona come knocking. Hell, you said broken glass. You're going to want to go, and it's got to be hard for a player like Jaden at the age he is. 21, and suddenly Barcelona knocking on the door. How on earth can you not have your head turned? So, and the owner has always said that he will only keep players that want to be here. If a player, he doesn't want to sell anybody, but if a player comes to him and says, I want to go, then he will let them go. We saw it with Lee Darnborough. Lee Darnborough knocked on his door and said, I want to go to Stoke City, and he let him go. Ozan Tufan knocked on his door and said, I want to sign for Besiktas. For Trabzonspor. He's let him go. So, yes, it could happen. I just don't think the loan thing is from a club point of view, given the situation they're in with the lack of players and lack of quality they've now got, given all the players that have already gone. It worries me with only 5 weeks, 6 weeks to the start of the season. Fletch.
Yeah, and I think for context of the interest for Jaden Philogene is, what I understand is that he's their number 2 target. They want to go and get Nico Williams first for that position, but as you've alluded to, Baz, their financial situation, they're on their backside. They have absolutely nothing to spend.
They're big stealing Warrior, which is why they're trying to get a loan deal, isn't it? It is like classic Del Boy tactics.
Well, to give you
on the hook.
To give you an idea of just how, up the creek without a paddle they are, back in 2017, they sold Neymar for over £200 million, or 200 million euros, I should say, and they still only turned out, I think, something like £20 million worth of profit for that season. And then you look at what they're doing with Camp Nou, and it's from what I've read, it's costing them near billions. So everything is going into renovating their home. And let's not forget that this is not something new for Barcelona. They've been really down and out financially for seasons and seasons now, depending on bringing their youth players through, which they're, of course, world-class facilities and whatnot, they can do that. So that they're scraping the barrel big time, and they just haven't got anything to play with. As you say, for Jaden Philogene, his head's going to be turned, isn't it, if Barcelona come knocking? Absolutely. But then to create a dilemma, if it all falls through, what's that going to be like for the player? If, you've had your head turned by the idea of possibly going to Barcelona, it falls through, a Premier League club might come knocking, but is that going to be as interesting? And what's the situation going to be like for him? It could be a really interesting mix. I don't know what you would think about that, Prutz, as the ex-player in the room.
Yeah, I mean, it's put into sharp focus, and I say this with the greatest respect to a division that I cover wholeheartedly and love to bits. If he's gone from Barcelona to Bristol City in the space of a few weeks, opening game of the season, then that's a gear change, isn't it, with regards to getting his head back in the game for what City expect of him as well, because he's one of, if not the main player, isn't he? So he's got to be ready to be that type of player to carry that responsibility. I don't know whether a situation like this brings others out of the woodwork with regards to what you're saying, Fletch, possibly with because we half discussed Jaden at the back end of last season being attractive to Premier League clubs, but from what I remember and recall, there was no one that was really with any concrete sniffs of the player, was there? And given the finances of Barcelona compared to the majority of the Premier League, obviously PSR notwithstanding for these clubs, then they would have more clout when it came to paying for players, wouldn't they? And also they would have more clout when it came to wages as well. I think I'd say on average, Premier League wages are up there with the very best, I think, in the world. So maybe it does draw someone else out of the woodwork. And it also reflects as well what the kind of payment structures are. It's a bit hypothetical because we are talking about a hypothetical situation with Jaden and Barcelona and potentially one with the Premier League team. You look at what's happened with Archie Great Leeds, and the kind of finer details of that is with agreeing a fee with Brentford and agreeing a fee with Spurs, but how they can pay it in a more significant way, in a quicker way, when a team like Leeds needs money. So that's a slightly different thing. But with this situation, even if it is kind of flattering paper talk, it's still a tough one for a player to get his head around because, as I said, no matter what the current incarnation of Barcelona is, it's still one of the two biggest clubs in Spain and one of the grand old kind of ladies of European and world football. So it would be completely remiss as a footballing romantic, as he potentially is, Jaden, to, if there is a possibility there, with all due kind of mercenary cynicism, if it was me, which is, again, is trying to put myself in a position of a player that was way better than I ever was, it would be an extremely hard one not to pursue. And if there was an offer, it would be even harder to turn it down because it's life-changing, isn't it? Christ.
Let's be honest, Bernsey. The opportunity to play for Barcelona for any player is incredible, and you would be remiss to not want to explore that. And I think Barcelona might have financial troubles, but as Prutz says, Bernsey, they're still one of the biggest clubs in the world. You know, when the new camp when it's finished, it's an incredible stadium. It was before. You know, you're playing Champions League football. That opportunity at that age is once in a lifetime opportunity stuff on the field, but off it as well, isn't it? So, as Prutz says, Bernsey, that is we know there is interest, so it isn't just paper talk. We know there is some substance to it. Even if there was a degree of skepticism at the outset, it appears there is genuine interest. So, where are you at with it? What's your thoughts on the whole scenario, both from the player's point of view? Because I think sometimes we can get lost in what the player, we're all about Hull City. We want this, we want that, but there's a human being involved in this as well, isn't there?
Well, absolutely, I agree with wholeheartedly with what the fellas are saying. I think it's really difficult for City because, if Barcelona come knocking, then you open. If you're a player, you open the door and you go. But what's in it for City? If there's a reasonable loan fee, and I don't know what reasonable is, £5 million for a season, then maybe. But if it's not at that level, then you've got an asset that I do think will go this summer. I'm convinced he ain't going to be here for the Bristol City game. I don't see it personally. I think he'll go. I think there's interest from Spurs, there's interest from West Ham, interest from Everton in him, whether he wants to do that or not. But I think he'll go. I also think from the club point of view, as I said at the top, with him and Greaves, accepting that they probably will go, and I think they'll go, then you've got to do the business early because then the funds you've got to strengthen your squad to have a go at getting in the Premier League yourself. So it's got to be done. But the club have got to protect themselves. So what is a reasonable loan fee for him if that's how the deal's structured? Because there's a chance he goes to Barcelona for a season, doesn't really get a chance in the team, and it doesn't quite work out, so his transfer value drops. Admittedly, he could go there, it could be an absolute star, and Barcelona shell out the agreed 25, 30 million euros at the end of the year. But are they going to have money in a year's time? Don't know. It doesn't sound like it. You don't suddenly find that sort of money. So I think it's a dangerous deal, the Barcelona one, from the club point of view.
Go on, Fletch.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'm incredibly curious to know why they've actually looked. And I suppose it depends on the exposure that the Championship has abroad, doesn't it? Because why have Barcelona, with all due respect to the Championship, why have they come looking in the Championship for a player who didn't get promoted? And I know that sounds a bit, it sounds a bit simple, doesn't it? But considering no English player since Gary Lineker has gone to play for Barcelona either, it's not really a hotbed. It's not really something Barcelona do. They never really dip into the Premier League unless it's someone who's come from abroad, played in the Premier League and then gone back again. The world of hypothesis is, if Barcelona can't front the money now, or a Premier League club decides to come in for him, what do you lads think if this is the world of hypothesis? It's completely made up, but if they said, right, we'll give you a reduced fee, so say 10 million quid, 15 million quid, but you can have him back on loan for the season, do you think the club would be interested in that?
Good question. I think it's one to consider. I'm not sure that would happen. If I'm honest, I don't know. I feel like Philogene would be a player that a Premier League team would want in and around their squad, not necessarily to loan back. I could be wrong, but I feel like it would be a buy to have an impact in the Premier League. And I'm not sure Jaden would. He's an ambitious boy. You've spoken to him on a number of occasions, like I have, and I get the impression that if he signs for a Premier League team, he wants to go and be. He will feel that he can challenge for a place in the Premier League team. I feel that if City are to sell him, and I think there's a greater chance of him being sold than Jacob Greaves. I think that's an easier deal to be done. If I'm honest, I think it's a safer deal for City to sell him to a Spurs or an Everton or a West Ham or a team in the Premier League that we know have money. As Bernsey, you allude to, the Barcelona thing worries me purely because of how their finances are. If they were buying him up front and you were getting I know how transfer deals are structured these days, and and whatever. But if I was selling to Barcelona, I would want a degree of that financial security paid up front. I wouldn't want it structured over 5 years with 5 million a year for the next 6 years or 5 years. I would want guarantees now, because I don't want to come across as disrespectful and say I don't trust them. But we're all aware it's a huge open secret about Barcelona's financial difficulties. So I would.
That's why you sell to. Again, going back to the Brentford Spurs thing with Archie. Sorry to turn. I'm not trying to turn it into a Leeds United podcast at all. But from what you hear, it's because, with the greatest respect, the bigger the club, the more established the club, should be able to front the money up a lot quicker than another club. So to sell to a Barcelona, again, this even using the word sound, with the greatest respect to Jaden, sounds insane. You would expect that big chunk of money to be forthcoming, but given what the parameters of Barcelona are financially, and then it's a great point Fletch makes regarding a player that we've all seen and know can operate at this level. I've got absolutely no idea why they're in for Jaden, but given the breadth and the scope of the players that have worn that shirt, and again, that's no detriment to Jaden at all, but you are kind of going, well, I can't find the straight line here. And then sometimes in deals such as this, or potential chats such as this, there could be so much happening behind the scenes. Whoever has got the player's registration, whoever looks after the player, whoever that player, the agency is that's connected to bigger worldwide agencies, I don't know. And that's not anything sinister. I'll suggest that anything sinister at all. But sometimes to join the dots, it takes quite a winding way to get there, because yes, Jaden is a very good player. Have I seen enough of him to see what Barcelona would see in him? No, I haven't. And that is, again, no detriment to the player, because he's a young player with hopefully the brightest of futures. But going back to what Fletch said about players that have potentially kind of gone abroad, Trippier went to Atletico Madrid, didn't he? Gareth Bale went to Real Madrid. Yes, I know that these are slightly absurd comparisons, but there was a real tangible block of body of work that these people could look at and go, I could absolutely see why you'd go for that particular type of player. But with this, there's just so many elements to the unknown. There could be a case, as Bernsey was saying, where he goes there and doesn't quite do it, but then it almost becomes a free hit, because to not quite do it at Barcelona, join the other 8 billion people on the planet that haven't quite done it at Barcelona. You know what I mean? So it's no, or if he goes there and is amazing, Jesus, that's his life altered forever. The trajectory of his career altered forever. So there's so many what ifs in this that it's a real head scratcher, I think.
Can I add one more what if?
In terms of what Brooks is saying, I'm going to put on my CV, didn't quite do it at Barcelona.
Didn't quite make the grade at Barcelona. Oh, close one.
Well, so close. Fletch, just on that, 32 games he played in the Championship last season, 12 goals and 6 assists, 9 yellow cards. Is those are obviously really strong stats for his first full season in the Championship, having moved from Aston Villa. Do you feel, Fletch, that he is a player not only at Barcelona, but would be ready to step up and play regularly in the Premier League? Do you think he's at that level, or do you think he would be better served having another year under his belt, playing with Hull City in the Championship, playing week in, week out, get those stats already, admittedly high stats, up for even better, and then look at that next summer? Or do you think this summer, right, he's ready now?
I think he's ready as long as he gets the level of service that he did at Hull City. So there's going to be some clubs in the Premier League which I don't think would fit his style of play, but then I think there's some that would. But the conundrum is, I think the most of the clubs that he would suit are so attacking, and they've got talent already there which he would have to really battle with. I could see it being a case of, let's take Spurs as an example, or even West Ham. Would he be getting consistent minutes like he did in the Championship? And you could debate that as well for Barcelona. But when he's getting something like 4 shots a game, I think it was, he had the most shots per game of any player in the Championship last season. He got so much service. So he needs a football club that's going to continue to give him that level of service in games. Otherwise, people are going to look at him next year if he goes to a Premier League or La Liga, and they're going to do that thing where they go, well, he played 25 games, 30 games, half of them was off the bench, for example, and he scored, I don't know, 3, 4, and people are just going to go, well, he scored 3 and 25. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more underneath, which, without wishing to be disrespectful, people don't have the time to go and look at in the same way journalists and analysts and do, because that's part of our job. So I think if he gets the level of service and gets the game time, then yes. But the difficulty is which club best fits that sort of style that he needs. So I've kind of answered the question, but then again, I haven't answered the question. So I'll leave it to debate. The thing I was going to add regarding the transfer, sorry, it's another hypothetical thing just to add to the mix. If Barcelona turned around and said, well, if you give us him now, we'll give you this player in return on loan, do you think that would be favourable?
Depends what the player is. It's ironic, actually, in election week, you should avoid answering the question. I think
you get an aging Polish striker in return to come and lead the line. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Pedri. I think it would depend on the player, wouldn't it? But I think City would want finance, and without wishing to go over it again, I think City need. We've done this to death, but a club that haven't been in the Premier League now since 2017, don't have parachute payments, have modest attendances and modest income compared with a lot of clubs in the Championship. It's Adrian said himself that the financial obligations he has. So I think I'm not sure that a straight swap or a little bit of money and a player is of much cop, really. I think it's got to be big money to because the other thing as well, if you take Philogene out of their team, if you look at the goals, we were doing this a couple of weeks ago. You look at the goals that have already been lost out of their team: 9 from Carvalho, 7 from Dilat. You've got small contributions, 3 from Zaruri and Ohio and players like that, a couple from Morton, a few from Connolly at the start of the season. A lot of goals have already gone out of that team at the end of the season with the players that have moved back to their clubs on loan or have been released. You take 12. This was from Philogene. This was a Liam Rossini team. Let's not forget that wasn't the most attacking. Fletch, you had a great stat there that he's had more shots than anybody else in the championship in a team that wasn't known for its attacking football. Well, the new manager Tim Volter is theoretically an upgrade on that in terms of how attacking he's going to play. So a Philogene in a Tim Volter team with the license to attack that he will have, those stats are going to improve. But my worry at the minute, they've already lost so many goals out of their team. You take Philogene's goals out of it as well, and where are the two fans gone as well? I've not even mentioned that. Where are these goals coming from? And it's all right telling him, which it looks like it could happen, but we're on the second of July, little over a month now till the start of the season. Where are the goals going to come from? They've got to. And
I was just going to say, would you like to guess if Philogene goes? Would you like to guess how many goals the rest of the squad that Hull City have scored?
Probably about
based
8.
On last year.
7. About 8 or 7. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, and that's the gap. And this is.
Do you not expect him to go then, Baz? Do you expect City to resist all moves for him?
No, I don't think.
I don't know the lad, but I suspect he'll want to go, and I think he'll go.
Yeah, I think before we play Leeds, we go to Ellen Road on the 31st of August, assuming it stays on that date. I think he'll go. I think that if I was a betting man, I'd put 50 pence on Jaden going and Greaves staying. But I'm nervous at the minute because I know things are going on behind the scenes, but until players start arriving and players of genuine quality that you think actually that player coming in is going to make a difference, that player is going to score a goal. I'm nervous.
Why do you think Greaves will stay?
I just don't. I'd be surprised if he sold them both. Personally, I think there's more chance of Greaves giving it another year, and I think there's more chance of them selling Philogene rather than Greaves. I would at this stage. I would be surprised if both left. I'm not saying that isn't going to happen. The transfer window is funny, isn't it? And anything can happen. And we're still a long way out from the end of the window. But as it stands now, I think probably Jaden's more likely to go than Jacob. But we'll see. I'm not nailing any colours to the master or anything at this stage. But I think they can get. I think there's a feeling they can probably get bigger money for Jaden this summer than Jacob. But as we talked about before with Steve Bruce, didn't we? Jacob has also got a decision to make because his stock is massively high. He's coming off the back of a tremendous season, named in the team of the year, arguably one of the top 2-3 centre backs in the championship. He's got an opportunity as well. So I just worry that at the minute they're in a really weak position, the City. They've got a new manager in place. They've got players like Lakilo and Ryan Longman coming back off loans. We're out in Turkey next week, and there's going to be a couple of friendlies out there, and that the team that starts out there is going to be, it's not going to have a lot in it, is it? And that's the worry for me. And you're losing Philogene, but it all comes down to what they bring in, and that is the crux of it.
Can I ask you? You mentioned Archie Gray, just to sort of get perspective on it. How much are we talking about from either Spurs or Brentford?
Well, I think they combined because Joe Rodon's going in the other direction, from what I gather. So I think that kind of works out potentially at Archie being around 35 million quid. I mean, give or take,
relative to Philogene and Greaves, then, a better player, a better prospect than the both of them? Should they be in that ballpark?
That's a very good question. I was chatting about this to a Leeds United journal about potentially people being miffed about, because they're talking about the potential of what Archie is, and he's been raved about for such a long time. And then the comparison that I was using was what Spurs paid for Brennan Johnson. So that was reported to be between 45 and 50. These are all reported. I don't know exact facts and figures. But Brennan had lots of championship games under his belt. He had a promotion under his belt. He had a season in the Premier League under his belt, and he was an international footballer. Therefore, there's a lot of boxes to be ticked. And he scored goals.
Archie didn't score goals.
No, he didn't. But that sense of what he could be from a midfield or a fullback point of view, there is a lot of potential in there. So they are buying potential. I thought anything north of 35 to 40 is dreamland for that, for a player that's done one season in the Championship, in a team, going back to what Fletch says, that didn't get promoted, in a team that wasn't in the top 3 teams that left the division at all, that because they didn't go up. So I think monetary-wise, I think attacking players probably, it's not anything new, is it? They would garner more attention with regards to a fee. To put Jaden in that bracket, so what? 30-odd games for City in the Championship, 37 or so, was it for Cardiff? A couple for Stoke, and 2 or 3 for Villa. We are talking about careers that are very much in their infancy. So in that respect, for a Jaden, I think, yeah, it's because as well, you look at Archie's just turned 18, Jaden's 22. So I think, again, even though we are talking about young players, one's vastly younger than the other. So Archie could go to Spurs and play, I don't know, for the next 15 years. Whereas Jaden's catching up a little bit more, obviously having had that experience of being at Villa and starting out at Villa. I think that probably puts Jaden in the kind of 20 to 25 million pound bracket. Like I said, I'm chucking numbers out. Like I know the fact that the inner machinations of it. I don't. Just having seen what players have gone for, and going back to players moving on from City, we talked about it with Steve Bruce. Maguire and Robertson both had Premier League experience. Jared has hit the ground running, of course, and done so unbelievably well at West Ham from that point of view. So players that move on and the fees that are commanded are absolutely governed by the club that they go to, the structure of the payment plan that they go to the clubs that they join. And market value. I'm trying to chuck someone out of my head that's of a similar ilk to what Jaden has been.
Morgan Rogers.
Morgan Rogers, yeah, that's a decent enough comparison. How much did he go for?
It was about 20. Was it about 20 million? Let me check that because I'm not.
18 springs to mind for me.
Yeah.
Right. So I think. Go on, Fletch. Go on.
No, all I wanted to add to what you're saying, Prutz, is regarding Archie Greaves, that fee for me is a fee that's commendable on the basis of the fact that Archie Gray, and correct me if I'm wrong, he can play 2 positions very, very comfortably. He can play centre mid very comfortably, and he can play at fullback very, very comfortably. Mm-hmm. The difference is Jaden Philogene, with all due respect, position-wise, is one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Just on the subject of Rodgers, the fee apparently was 8 million up front, and then up to 16 million pounds with various add-ons. So I mean, that's nothing. You wouldn't be if that's the deal that was on the table for Philogene, you'd be walking away and saying, "Christ, what are you talking about?" Because you wouldn't be taking that, would you?
Mm. Should we find out what the public is saying?
Go on. Yeah, yes, Fletch. Can I
just throw one in, Fletch, before we get that, because just on Jacob Greaves, is, Baz, you might know, a £10 million Ipswich bid, according to The Athletic. Anything in that?
They wouldn't even give that the time of day. You won't, whether yes, Ipswich were interested, definitely, but that isn't a deal that the club would be looking to do, I don't think, because why for 10 million quid? That's not, for me, a player.
That's a chance in their arm. Ipswich, that seems, which is well within the rights, but it's almost kind of, is it worth the kind of? I mean, whether I presume they're not even facts through now, but that's not even worth the time of day of the actual.
Not a chance.
That's just going fishing in it and seeing if they need the money. So,
and with respect, and I'm not sure that's a move that Greavesy would want either. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm not sure that, leaving Hull City for Ipswich, that's going to be.
There's as good a chance that they can play each other in the Championship after next season, and that's with the greatest respect to Ipswich. But they are instant, having been promoted, they're instant cannon fodder. That's just the way things work.
Yeah, if it was Greavesy going to West Ham and working the
Brentford,
or
Brighton, something like that.
Dyche likes him at Everton. If Branthwaite goes to Man United, there's certainly interest from Everton. We know that Everton are interested. There's a lot of, and if Greaves is to go, there's a lot of clubs that want him. There's a lot of clubs that have been eyeing him up. I'm just not sure Ipswich career wise is yes, he gets to play in the Premier League straight away, but that's going to be
and for Kieran as well. Kieran will be a big draw as long as he's there.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, Baz, I actually disagree with you on that, because I think if he goes to Ipswich, he'd be almost at the forefront of that 11, because we've spoken, haven't we, all last season, how Ipswich, their squad was not a top-end Championship squad. They were just so well coached and well drilled, and Kieran McKenna got the best out of them. And all of a sudden, Ipswich, now that they've got promoted, and this is what we're craving from a Hull City point of view, it's like, from a financial point of view, you've got a big pot of money, and because you're in the Premier League, you can lift the lid off and you can just get your hands in and delve into as much cash as you want. They're bidding 20 plus for Amari Hutchinson, for example, who was there on loan.
Actually, that's again, when we talk about, like Prutz was talking about there, with comparisons to Jaden and trying to work out what would be a fair valuation for Jaden, Hutchinson going to Ipswich for 20 million quid. How does that fit in with a potential fee for Jaden?
It's interesting, isn't it? Really interesting.
Fletch, you had some tweets to the 1904 club messages?
I don't have them in front of me, but I was sort of... I was coming to you because you're the one who normally...
Path there.
Make them up. Make them up.
I'll get them. I know Baz has got stuff to go to, but can we sort of continue on the other on the other side of the transfer thing? Because there's a few names floating about, and I'm interested to know what people think, whether there's any substance in them. Can I throw a few names in?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. What do we know about Zanzella, the FC Lugano striker who's been out of the Euros with Slovenia? 442 in Switzerland say City are interested. 51 goals in 118 games for his club. Anybody?
Decent enough record, that, isn't it? He's powerful. Looks a decent lad, and I kind of feel that that's the sort of player that would probably, when you look at City's transfer past in the last couple of years, that profile of player is probably where they will look. And when you look at Ajan's relationship with Slovenia, obviously he's involved at Maribor. You kind of feel that that's the sort of deal that would be relatively would have potential, would have legs. Yeah,
I think he'd fit as
Anybody
well.
Else
just
know anything about
him? That he used to be in Roma's academy. I know that it's a long time ago, but he's got that European experience of playing in the Conference League. And his ratios are good. His ratios are nearly 1 in 2 throughout his whole career. Just over 6 foot, gets it down. I think he's held his own, hasn't he, at the Euros when I've watched him.
Fletch, when you look at Volter's style, how he was at Hamburg and Stuttgart before that, that profile of striker is would you kind of feel would fit his system, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'd be if you yes or no, would I be happy? I'd say yes. Sign him.
And also, when you look at when you think back 2 years, and we signed Oscar Estepinen from Guimarães in Portugal, he arrived with he arrived having scored a lot of goals relatively in the Primeira Liga over in Portugal. Had done well. He was a tall, physical striker, and he came in and he did really well. Actually, he had that. He scored 7. Was it 7 goals in his first 5 games or something like that? And
I think they were all from 7 yards or less.
Yeah, but they didn't have that at all last year, really, did they? They lacked bits and pieces, but they didn't have anybody, the fox in the box, what we used to describe Franny Jeffers as back in the day. in the 90s at least. But yeah, I mean, they need that. Look, they need strikers. That's an obvious, thing to say. And he has an interesting profile. And I'm still intrigued to see what happens with Oscar, because I know he scored a couple of goals again the other night. He just scores goals, and he scores goals. I still think to say that he came into a struggling team in the Championship that didn't create a huge amount. Yes, he was streaky. He had an injury. Liam didn't fancy him. He could have brought him back in. They had discussions about bringing him back in January. Liam Rossini said no and decided to go in a different direction. For me, I look at that and I think you have to give that due consideration, because Oscar, he's got his flaws, but in a poor team in the Championship, he scored a few goals. And I think in a better team with better players around him, and with a manager that could probably get the best out of him, I do think that's something that should be considered and probably is being considered. Go on, Benji, have you got anything else for us?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, I've got a few names actually, because I've had a look round to see what's out. Chris Walker gets in touch with the 1904 club, and a player that Tan went to see back in January, and they were interested in, now out of contract, Chris Willock at QPR. Anything in that? Would you take him? Fletch?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'd take him in a heartbeat.
100%.
If you're losing Philogene.
Yeah, like him a lot. Yeah, he's good.
He was once regarded as, QPR haven't been at the dizzy heights of the Championship for a couple of seasons now, but I remember when they were pushing, Willock was team of the season caliber, wasn't he? So, and he hasn't necessarily gone off the boil at QPR. It's just because he hasn't scored goals. What he's done in games is tremendous for QPR. It's if he's not going to command a fee of any high value, is he? Because am I right? Is he out of contract? Is he in his last season of contract? Go get him then.
I think he might be out.
Go get him. If we've already got interest in him, go sign him.
Well, there you go. There's an instruction.
Emphatic from Flex. Love it, man.
Chris also wonders whether they might revisit Keenan Davis, though given that he probably peed them off by, not coming to City last time out, but he's not had a good time in Italy. Would he be a reasonable shout?
If he's the player that helped get Forest over the line, then yeah, I don't know what, like you say, that kind of intervening period when he's been away from the Championship, we don't quite know what he's about, do we? I mean, any idea the age of the player?
David, I think he's 26 pros.
Yeah, well, again, if it works from a wages point of view, because that's the other thing about whoever City bring in, they've got to be very cautious, as everyone has to be, with regards to finances and how close they are to getting towards any kind of limit of spending, because we've seen punts on players not necessarily come off. Aaron Conley potentially being one of those, brought in to score goals for City, didn't quite do it. Different reasons and dynamics to that, of course, but that kind of part punt and gamble that comes with bringing a new player in. Are they hungry enough? Because they've changed manager because of A, style of play, and B, to do better than last season. And if you're going to change personnel, that personnel's got to get you at least into the top six.
Davis is an interesting one, because I was really for him coming last year or whenever it was, and he obviously he came really close. I know he had a lot of meetings with Tan, with Ajun, and it was. I think Davis found it really difficult deciding between City and Udinese, and that was ultimately the toss-up. And I think the appeal of potentially playing in Serie A was too strong, but it's not really worked out. He obviously got injured. I think he got injured on his first or second day of training out in Udinese, and that killed his season. He did come back at the end of the season. I think played 7 or 8 times. Scored on the final day.
He did.
So that's an interest. So Davis is. I like Willock. I think Willock's a really, really good. And that, for me, that type of signing in the Championship is a good signing. It's risk free. He's out of contract. His salary isn't going to be massive. despite the fact he's been at QPR. Obviously, we know the QPR were paying big money for a period of time, but I don't think Willock was involved in that. And he's a good, sensible Championship signing at a decent age. I think they need good, see one or two players of that caliber to come in that know the league, that have been and done it in the league. I've got the T-shirt. So I think that, and on a free transfer, that would be a really, really sensible one. Davis, again, I think Davis is the sort of striker that would flourish under Volta, but his injury record last season is a concern. But there's no doubt, like me, you would have watched him closely when he played under Steve Cooper at Forest.
Did a job, yeah.
Yeah, he came in January, was absolutely crucial to get him. He didn't score a huge amount of goals, and I think that was the thing that was levied at him when he was at Villa. Excuse me, he didn't score enough goals, but his hold-up play, the ability to bring in other players like Zinkernagel and Johnson was absolutely crucial. And if you were to put him in that City team, Philogene or another or somebody else down that side, it would work. The finances of that, I'm not sure. Obviously, he's on a contract until I think 27 with an option. So he signed a relatively long-term deal at Udinese. So I'm not sure that's one that they'll look to do. But yeah, I mean, that profile is what you'd be looking for: powerful, dynamic, quick striker that can grab a goal or two, but also can bring others into it. And I think that is what they need. They just need goals, because their team at the minute hasn't got, as Fletch, you brilliantly pointed out, 8 goals in that team now, and that is a worry, isn't it?
Big time.
I'll throw a couple more names in, and then we might talk about something else. But I'm always fascinated by the transfer talk, and fans want to know what's going on, what people have heard. The Palace winger that they looked at last year, is it Raksaki?
Yeah.
Is he on the agenda again?
I think if he was available,
especially if Philogene goes out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was a player that they've liked, they've looked at for a long time. They've liked. They came really close last January deadline day to doing that, and it was. Yeah, in fact, they did. Sorry, yeah, they did. It was last deadline day in August, or whenever it was at the end of the summer. That was a deal they came very close to doing. In principle, it had been agreed with Crystal Palace, and that was going to be, if I'm trying to think back now, that I think was going to be the last deal of the day. It was kind of an extra one. If you think back, I think we put something out, I think, saying they were working on an extra deal. Like one last minute surprise, and Raksaki was that deal. And Steve Parish, I think, and Roy Hodgson at that time, it was yes, it was no, and ultimately, the 11th hour, Palace pulled the plug on it, and they decided they wanted to keep him. But he's a player that they've liked for a long time, and I think if I know there's a lot of speculation about Raksaki again this summer, but that said, he was involved in the squad under the new manager at Palace, wasn't he? So whether Palace see him as a player that can potentially make the step up and be, have not just be on the bench and carry the drinks, but be a player that can come off the bench and maybe get in the team. But because Palace are playing a different brand of football now as under Glasner compared to what they were under Hodgson, so that is one that we'll have to wait and see. But I think if he's available, absolutely in a heartbeat, because as I say, he's a player they've liked for quite a while.
Can I throw a name in there that's just popped into my head?
Yes.
Do you remember? I think it was one that was very nearly done. He's not at Barcelona anymore. He's at Marseille. Is it Conrad de la Fuente?
Yes,
the winger.
He was the guy that he was on a plane, wasn't he, to come to Hull? He was supposed to get on a plane to come to Hull and do the deal, but he was on loan at. Was he at Olympiacos? But he was on loan at Marseille. Yeah.
Liam at the time said, didn't he, with the BBC? I think it was with the BBC. He said that they didn't get their paperwork through on time.
Yeah.
So it was the other club's fault or something. They needed Marseille and Olympiacos to sign it off,
and it went belly up. So there's another player that they've liked, and again, that sort of player. If you're going to sign him, you've got to sign him now, because signing him in January. He hadn't played for eons, and he hasn't played again. He just isn't playing and hasn't played. So, Prutz, you could probably give some information on this. But when you're not playing and you're not playing, it's all right. You're training and you might be training on your own and trying to keep fit. But if you're not playing for 6, 7, 8 months, what impact does that have on not only your mentality but your sharpness and your ability to then come into a championship team potentially have an impact?
Well, I'm just looking at De La Fuente here, and the fact that 19 games last season on loan at Eibar, 3 Olympiacos the season before, 16 at Marseille, Barcelona B 25. That isn't a lot of games for a kid that's 22 at all. Looking at Raksaki as well, not a lot of games for a kid that's 21 who was on loan at Charlton the season before last. And a lot of chat with Raksaki about potentially signing a new contract. If he does, then he goes out on loan. It's obviously future-proofing the talents of the player and the cost of the player. There's a lot of similarities with the players that we're talking about. And on a more positive note, and looking hopefully at these potential situations and taking away the cynicism, it would be great if it was Hull City where they had a big bank of games behind them by the end of this season, wouldn't it? So if you've got, I don't know, you're knocking out 40 odd games for City this season, that then gets their career up and running, and it's mutually beneficial to Hull City because in theory, if they've played that many games and they're quite skillful, intricate players that can unlock a defence, that's done well for Hull City as well, hasn't it? So there is, like I said, it goes back to the sense of what a signing would be. Part gamble, you've got Keenan who's got championship experience. But whether he's up to speed after the season that he's had with regards to it being injury hit, only time will tell, and the proof will be when you see him play for whoever he starts the season for. So from a player's point of view, it's sometimes a bit easier to compartmentalise the season that's gone before because I've had injury hit seasons, then you're okay for pre-season and you do hit the ground running, hopefully stay fit, and then you're hopefully in that first team that's picked for the first game of the season. And almost that bank of games that you could have had under your belt have been and gone, and it hasn't happened. So this is where your next portion of your career starts again, especially for these lads that we're talking about that maybe bounced around a little bit on loan. Sometimes finding a home can bring out the best of them, as we saw potentially with Jaden, didn't we, this season?
I mean, at least
you might find out in. Sorry, I was going to say you might find out in the Euros and England's next game what it's like to not play for months and then get a game with Luke Shaw, whether he actually.
I mean that's amazing.
I know.
Yeah. Let's not go there. Can I throw in
just
2
before
more
that,
names?
Hang on.
Yeah, go on then.
At least he did play a few games before the end of the season. But as Prut said, he's got a great pedigree. You know, you look at his coming through the academy at Barcelona, La Masia, and we've already talked about them, and going to Olympiacos. He's got a good pedigree, but it's just the amount of games and availability of players. And City have had enough problems over the last couple of years with not being able to put players on the pitch. And that was the beauty of signing Philogene, wasn't it? He'd played 40 times for best part of 40 times for Cardiff. And it's always a risk when you're signing players that haven't played a huge amount of games, 10 games here or 10 games there. And that's the risk. But get far away, Burnsy, because I know we're short of time.
All right. Alan Nixon, the journalist, is suggesting James McConnell, Liverpool midfielder, 19-year-old, as a transfer target for City. 9 appearances in a Carabao Cup final winners medal for Liverpool. Anything in it?
Yeah, that's been one that's been around pretty much since the back end of last season. I think there's a fair chance that they'll get somebody from Liverpool. The relationship was obviously really strong. It was harnessed and enhanced with what they did with Morton and Fabio Carvalho last season. I know they've had meetings with Liverpool over the summer. So McConnell's a player they like. I wouldn't be surprised if something was with Liverpool was done.
Okay. And the only other one, Kalidou Sidibe at a French League Two club.
He's the
midfielder.
Yeah.
6'7" central defensive midfielder.
Yes.
Go
and get him.
That
need stepladders to interview him, Fletch.
Fletch reminds me of Dean Moosey.
Yes. I mean that's not a bad comparison. I mean that potentially may change the way that Tim Volta wants to play his football, and that's just saying that off the back of a 6'7" player in the middle of midfield.
Can I just come in on that? Because I know that they started, obviously, first day back in pre-season yesterday, and there was a lot of faces there that we've not seen for a while. Doken Sinnott was there, Ryan Longman, although I think Ryan...
They just did shooting for 3 hours solid. Forget Liam, none of this passing rubbish. Everyone just take a shot and keep going until the goal is knackered.
I think Longman, although he's back in training, I think Longman will be out. I think there's a lot of interest in him. Millwall, he obviously did well there last year. Neil Harris likes him. There's a mutual respect there. I think there is other interest, but I think Millwall are in the driving seat. I forgot what I was going to say, to be fair. I completely lost my train of thought. Who
do you think you are, me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. That was very much. Yeah. But anyway, back in pre-season, and from what I gather, they were really impressed with Tim's first day. Obviously, a lot of it was spent with Matt Busby, the fitness coach, doing testing and stuff. But the bit they did out on the grass with the balls, that there seems to be a big sea change from Tim, in the sense that he doesn't want his midfielders dropping deep. He doesn't want his midfielders dropping to pick the ball up off the back four. He wants them to play higher. So last season we saw, Seri would come and get the ball off the goalkeeper, and then sometimes in his own penalty area. I'd be surprised if we see that, based on the bit of info I've gleaned from day one. Is he wants his defenders to carry it out and carry it higher, and the player his midfielders to stay away from the back four and not get too deep. So it's only a minor thing, but that's a really interesting thing, really interesting change of approach that will get them playing higher approach, won't it?
It will. When working out in Hamburg, of course, is Tim Walter's old stomping ground. The crew that we're working with are a German TV crew, and they're all lovely. And I got a text off one of the Steadicam ops, who himself is about 6'7", ironically enough, saying that he was on the bus to the airport, which I didn't get on, with Tim Walter. So I missed ships in the night or buses on the Autobahn. I missed him to be able to go and introduce myself and get a blank expression back. Just say, I don't care who you are, who the hell are you, not talking to. But and there was a lot of people. Not for a minute was I walking around Hamburg going, "What do you think of Tim Walter? What do you think of Tim Walter?" But to all intents and purposes, there was a period of football and time there that everyone really, really enjoyed. So it was a case of a couple of the Hamburg fans were strap yourselves in, because it'll be very, very interesting. It might not be the most what's the word? This kind of very pragmatic that we've seen about points accruing and we're going to be here by then and be there by then. It sounds a little bit more, and I mean this with the greatest respect, a bit more attack-minded and kamikaze than that, which, as kind of borderline neutral for me, is sat there rubbing your hands together, because what I've seen as well from the Euros of the teams that have really impressed, covered Georgia, covered Albania, covered Turkey, of course, which we've got a vested interest in with Hull City. The teams that seemingly go out there and really enjoy the game, which sounds a bit arse about face, have been the most wonderful ones to watch. Austria is another one where you go in, we understand there's a bit of defence in this international football, not quite as pragmatic as England, but let's be honest, England haven't been great to watch. These other sides, perhaps with a little less expectation, I totally get that, have just been a joy to watch. Ball carrying footballers that start higher up the pitch, that get the ball and turn out of passes made out of defence further up the pitch, have been a joy to watch. So a sprinkling of that on the banks of the Humber would be pretty nice, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
I've just had a pop-up actually from The Athletic on the subject of Archie Gray. £40 million, they're saying. So a couple of other things to mention. Ryan Woods, his contract has been terminated. He enjoyed a second half of the season on loan at Exeter City. Beautiful place, that. Exeter's a wonderful city. So he's gone. Harry Wood has joined Shelbourne on a permanent deal. So there's lots going on, and I guess the players, or the players, staff, and the media, we fly out to Istanbul on Wednesday week, so the 10th of July. 2 games out there. So in fairness, I know fans are asking a lot about transfers, but if we think back, Benji, you were there Tim Volter's inaugural press conference, which now feels a lifetime ago at the start of June, Ajun did say that he didn't expect any signings in the first week of pre-season. So to temper excitement and also frustration somewhat, I suppose, we're not really expecting anything this week. That may change. Of course, things do change. Hopefully, in the near future, but he did say that he didn't expect anybody to be here this week. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Bernsey, what have you got for us before we go?
Well, just a couple of concluding thoughts from listeners to the 1904 Club on the Jaden Philogene Barcelona link. John Mayle says we should not be bullied into a loan. If he goes, it needs to be a sale for a proper price. And also, Richard Eglin says, not sure Barcelona have the funds, pretty sure they're nearly bankrupt. Player will be tempted, but don't see how it would be good for City. Also suggested 16 million fee is way off if Archie Gray is going for double that from Leeds. Well, double that and more. And Richard says at the end, not much time to get deals done. I'm still patient about the deals, but you know.
Yeah, I think
I'm sticking to my guns. Philogene and Greaves, I think, will go, and you've got to get it done early, and then you can get on with the rest of it and spend the cash.
Was that John Mayle of John Mayle and the Blues Breakers fame? Do we think, Bernsey? Because if it was, that's amazing.
No, it's not. That's very good musical knowledge, Prutz, but it's a different spelling. It would have been amazing.
It's lost on these two on the other side of the camera. Which one point the wrong way? These two whoppers.
The frustration of the window is the fact that when you are a club in the mould of Hull City, where you have to balance the books, you're not at the top of the food chain, and you're fairly well down that food chain. You know, like last year, you're going to have to wait until deep in the window. Which, you know, by that point, you know, you've got 4 league games. You've got Bristol City, Plymouth, Millwall, and Dirty Leeds. There's a lot. You can't afford to lose a month. My worry is you can't afford to lose a month, 6 weeks of the season, and that is the concern. So, but they have to. You know, there are going to be deals that classic domino effect where they're waiting on a player coming out of a club, but that player can't be released until 4 or 5 other things fall into place above that in the chain. So it is, you know, there will be signings, and I'd expect 2 or 3 to come, you know, fairly quickly once the ball starts rolling. But the reality is that they're going to need 10 to 12 players, certainly 10, and it's getting those bedded in quickly, because that isn't easy. And ideally, you would have wanted 2 or 3 in before you go to Turkey. Obviously, last year you had Liam Delap joining arriving at the airport and getting on the flight to Istanbul. Let's hope that something similar happens, and things start to move fairly quickly. We have, of course, Fletch, we have seen one arrival. I know it's got very little fanfare, almost missed by many. Ryan Giles is moved from Luton Town complete, obligation to buy, in the region of £4 million. He was at training yesterday on Monday.
Yeah, good signing. It means the back 4 at the moment is something not to worry about at all for me. You can, talking about needing to sign loads of players, you can focus positionally wise on going and getting those that you need, and that's strikers. So, yeah, happy.
There is a caveat to that. However,
you're not going straight out the door to Middlesbrough, though.
Wow, my information.
That's the question mark, isn't it?
Yeah, my information is that Middlesbrough want him. That there is really strong interest, and it would not surprise me if a firm bid from Middlesbrough was placed in for Ryan Giles. If I couldn't sit here and say that Ryan Giles will be a Hull City player on either August the 10th at home to Bristol City, or even, you know, the next game after the window closes at home to Sheffield United in mid-September. That is one to watch. I'm not saying it's going to happen at this stage, but that is one to watch. And Middlesbrough are definitely interested in Ryan Giles. And let's wait and see.
Take a quick £1 million profit and handling fee, and away you go. I like him.
I
think we all like him as a player.
Could be like a David Livermore situation. Didn't he play for Leeds and then sign for Hull about 4 days later, Burnsy?
Pretty much.
Was you there at Leeds at the time, Prutz? Forgive me if you wasn't.
He might have been. I might have been. I mean, I was there a long time when it was all flipping around very quickly. We had people there for 2 minutes that often went somewhere else. So, he was a revolving door of waste and strays. Christ.
It just must be balmy. It's like, right, lads, pleased to meet you. I'm so and so.
See you later.
4 days later. Oh, might as well put that back on the shelf because I'm off.
And just to finish this week, chaps, Tom Huddlestone's announced his complete retirement from football. I know he's been he's obviously been out of the limelight to a point in the last couple of years playing at working at Man United with their youngsters. Burnsy, you covered Tom Huddlestone for the BBC. What a player he was for Hull City.
Amazing. So when you say he's announced his retirement from playing, I thought he'd retired, or is he turning his back on the game completely?
No, he played for Man United's under-21s last season.
Oh, right.
He was the token over age owner.
He took over for Paul McCain, didn't he?
Yeah, he's staying in a coaching role.
I think so, yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's good. I'm pleased for him. He was a delight to watch. It was just his range of passing and his ability. You can see why he got international caps for England. He was just fantastic player to watch. Bright, intelligent, always good to interview. I chatted to him a couple of years ago. He came on a show I did at the BBC with me and Swanee, and he was really good to talk to. He'd be a great guest for the 1904 club at some point to get him on, because he's a top man, and I wish him well. And I'm sure he's going to be a good coach. I say this with the caveat that it's been a bit wobbly at Man United. You don't get a job at Man United without being a good coach. I'm conscious of some of the stuff that's gone on at first team level, but that's a club structure thing. But wish him all the best. Top man.
Prutz, great player, wasn't he?
Yeah, very good. Nice kid. Only ever heard good things about him. So no, it's I think it was 600 or so games that he played. Something to be extremely proud of. Great hair as well, which is my barometer for measuring a player.
Very quickly before we do go,
I'm just suddenly thinking of Prutz as a manager and his transfer list.
There you go.
Like a ponytail in midfield.
Not him. No,
skinhead,
not him.
Carlos Valderrama, yes. We've got a chance.
A bit of ginger aggression in the midfield as well.
I know it's old hat now because it happened last Wednesday, so it's pretty much a week ago. But the fixture list landed last week. Any thoughts? I know we play everybody twice, I think, pretty much, and that's not changed, has it? But in terms of that,
a serious question.
Go on,
Can I ask a serious question? How many games do you think will get changed? Because Plymouth away, Wayne Rooney's first home game in charge, Sky are going to be all over that, sure.
Don't ask me. I've got no idea who's doing what when. I've got no idea when the games are, who's picked them.
You would think, given the fact there's going to be, I think, five 12:30 kickoffs, isn't there, on the opening weekend? Or is that every weekend now as part of the new TV deal? I mean, so we start at home to Bristol City, away at Plymouth, at home to Millwall, away at Leeds, with a cup tie against Sheffield Wednesday thrown in the first week. Prutz, just quickly, how does that opening month look to you?
Standard Championship fare.
Yeah.
If we've got any ideals about being in the top six, you need a pretty healthy return after that opening gambit. Yes, with a caveat of new manager, could be a fundamentally different team that we're looking at, and the dynamics that Fletcher has chucked in there with regards to new players and personnel elsewhere. So it's the Championship. There's no to get anywhere near the top of the tree come the end of the season. You've got to hopefully hit the ground running, because we saw teams try and make up for a slower start, which didn't quite get there. So it's the challenge that lies ahead, and I can't wait to get cracking.
Fletch, opening month, thoughts?
By average, for me, in terms of you've got a mixture, haven't you? You've got a mixture of good sides, bad sides. The thing is, the new manager from finishing 7th last year has to hit the ground running, doesn't he? And
correct.
It's an interesting set of fixtures. Bizarrely, I feel really sorry for those Bristol City fans, because if this has been in the pipeline for ages, that all the games on a Saturday are going to kick off at 12:30, it doesn't feel like they've given the fixture list much thought for the fans, have they?
I genuinely don't think that's the case for the.
No.
Are we talking about for the whole season? They won't have changed all the kickoff times for half 12. I mean, I know Sky cover a lot of football, but they've not. I don't think they have that much sway on literally saying every Saturday game's at half 12.
No, it's just like they've just.
Unless I've misread the email.
I think it's just the opening weekend where they all kick off at the same time.
Right, okay. Yeah, well, that'll be the case. But after that, then that's just.
Then I think there's 5 as part of the deal. I think there's going to be 5 12:30 kickoffs across the leagues thereafter.
Sounds like I should know this, but I don't.
Well, you've been busy having bratwurst and schnitzel.
Yes. And on that bombshell, come on, Jesus, an hour and 10 minutes. Come on, any podcast worth its salt tops out at 60 minutes.
Benji, quickly, opening month. 5 seconds.
You can't let go, Prutz. Sorry.
Opening month, quickly, come on. I'm on a day off today. You know?
I'm with Prutz. Standard championship fare. That's, you just
get on with it.
Bit of patience for the new manager. I'm not sure it'll be in great abundance, but it is what it is. Get on with it.
And speaking of getting on with it, that is where we're going to bring today's show to an end. Prutz, have fun back in Germany when you go.
I shall. Looking forward to it.
Fletch from your dirty cupboard, thank you very much.
Cheers, I'll give it a clean.
Yeah, and Burnsy, good to see you. Thanks for getting in touch, everybody. We will be back next week, so keep getting in touch. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching to the 1904 Club.